Good morning and welcome to the regular meeting of the Board of Water and Power Commissioners. Today is Tuesday, May 9th, 2023. This proceeding is being broadcast on Channel 35. The exact broadcast times can be found by contacting Channel 35. Board of Water and Power Commissioners, please say present for roll call. Commissioner KATZ. Present. Commissioner LEHRER.
Present.
President McCLAIN-HILL.
Present.
Commissioner NEEMAN Brady.
Present.
Vice President RUIZ.
Present.
5 board members, a quorum is present. Madam President.
Terrific, thank you. I don't have opening remarks this morning except to acknowledge that we have begun celebrating AAPI History Month, and we'll have comments more formal at our next board meeting in that regard. In the interim, I suspect that the general manager has a list of activities that will be taking place in connection with this department recognition, and want to congratulate Aspire for their work and look forward to their presentation as well. And with that, I will move this to our general manager for his report.
Do we need public comments or?
Oh, I'm sorry, public comments.
I'm sorry.
Public comment is now open. There are no public commenters. Public comment is now closed.
There we go.
I apologize, you were correct. Well, good morning, Madam President and Board of Commissioners. I want to highlight a few good things going on here. So first of all, last Saturday, we had our first ever Women's Career and Wellness Expo. It was beyond phenomenal hit. I think we had 1,700 RSVPs, and when I was there, I was told there were about 2,300 people had been there. Our latest estimate is close to 3,000 people turned out. So it was a wonderful event. We engaged a number of students that we helped bring into the site. Some we provided some bus transportation. I think there's some slides. Frazier has some slides queued up for here. And I know we have a video to show. And it was at our Truesdale Training Center. And it was, an area that's typically very male dominated. So our lineman training is in our pole yard. And it was great because we wanted to showcase careers that were available to women. And it was a great setting. The work was put on with the leadership of our Women's Council. I actually was, I know there's a number of people from the Women's Council that were, and other people who supported this. I actually was going to ask for the key names, and I got 125 names of the people. So it takes a village, and it took a village in this case. And it was the leadership of the Women's Council, and also supported by a strong contingent of our male employees who went out of their way to make this a great success. So we have a video coming up I'd like to share, but I know we have some of the folks from that were key behind this here. So anybody involved with the organization of this Women's Council, the people who supported it, can you please stand? And there we go. I was on my way a few blocks from there, and on KNX I heard LaTanya Bogan, her voice on the radio, prompting this, so we got good airplay, and it was just a wonderful event. I know we had our commissioners there, and Commissioner Ruiz led. I missed the meditation, by the way. That was a neat event. We had we showcased a few of our female blue collar employees talking about the jobs that they did, and we had folks come down from Bishop representing the Owens Valley, representing pretty much every aspect of the work that we do. And so it was a tremendous success, something that we are already looking forward to repeating again. And one of the key things was a lot of outreach for how to get in touch with us, how to reach out, how to stay in contact. We've set up now that when people use a QR code to reach out to us, we have a way to catalog them so we can reach back out and stay in touch. So that's a new addition that we have, and the ability to really continue that relationship. So we're hoping that this will help us to improve our numbers of female employees, particularly in the what they call the non-traditional roles that we see all the time. Do we have a video? I think we have a video that Ocean put together, and I'd like to show that to highlight this.
We want to see more women at LADWP.
That's right.
I like that women get an opportunity to come here and enjoy and see what kind of careers they can apply to.
So I'm in a customer service field, so now that I know you guys offer customer service here, that's something I can look into and like, okay, maybe I could try to do customer service here.
I do want to take after my mother because she's done a lot in DWP and she really works hard, and I want to be like her and work hard too.
Nice.
Thank you. And again, I want to thank the board for your leadership in really promoting that we do something like this. I know, Board President, you made the comment to me that the board had the idea, and the Women's Council went and amped it up about tenfold and did a fantastic job. And also want to thank our labor partners. IBW played a large role in launching this effort and supporting it all throughout. So thank you all who made this happen.
Marty, if I can I just want to jump in and say it was a phenomenal event, and I too want to acknowledge our board president, McCLAIN-HILL, and the Women's Council for doing it. And I know our labor partners, I saw Gus Corona actually making tacos all day, and so it was just an event. And so I posted it on my social media on LinkedIn, and I got many comments, but a comment from one of our employees that retired after 32 years, and she just said she had never seen anything like this. She took her daughter with her and her grandchild, and she just said it was heartwarming to see that the department put on an event like this. So congratulations, and thank you for your leadership.
No, thank you. I do want to make a couple comments about this. First, it is not shocking to me that you got such a large number of names. It reflects the kind of both culture and generosity of the women who work at this department, very slow to take credit, and very all-encompassing in terms of who they acknowledge. So that doesn't shock me, although I will say that I watched a very tight group of people work for months. Powering this idea. I remember the time when there were only a couple hundred registrants and they were worried that no one was going to show up. The real revelation of Saturday was to watch women bringing their family members, their spouses, their daughters, their nieces and nephews, and their friends and neighbors to see the department open its doors to community members. We had a very large contingent of unaffiliated folks who were visiting our Truesdale facility, and really a department-owned facility, not connected with their bill for the very first time. And also the camaraderie of our employees, both men and women, who went out of their way, spent all day, and for many the day before, to support the event. It was really quite something and reflects, I think, the best of the department, its values, and its real commitment to reaching beyond its traditional outlets to find and connect with community members and with residents of the city of LA. The women of the department have indicated, those that I spoke to, that they liked the date. They want to preserve it on a regular basis. So first Saturday in May belongs to them now at Truesdale. And I could not be prouder of the folks who powered this event, and more grateful to all of the elements of the department: fleet, water, power, security, customer service. I mean, meter readers, everybody showed up, and it was really something to behold. And I met the only female lieutenant in our security services area, which was both interesting and illuminating. I did indicate that she obviously needs company, and it pays to sort of get out amongst the workforce to see what's going on out there. So, and Marty, thank you, for being there. Simon, it was good to see you all, and Evelyn representing water. I understand that Anselmo's traveling on department business, but it was really terrific. UN as well. So thank you all.
Thank you.
I just want to add, because I feel like I would be remiss, I did not make it because I was not in town, but now I have the date a year in advance, so I can put it in, and I cannot wait.
Good point. Same here.
Thank you. As you mentioned earlier, so this May, every May, we celebrate Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month across the U.S. and here at Water and Power. And we have, of course, more than 2,000 employees who identify as AAPI, and primarily in the fields of engineering, administration, and information technology, although a number of folks in the field forces as well. And we recognize that, with this incidence of Asian hate, and it was only last January that we had the tragedy here in Monterey Park, that the reason to celebrate cultural diversity and really continue cultural understanding is very important, and so we're proud to do that here. Our Office of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, along with Communications and Corporate Strategy, are offering a number of events coming up to celebrate the month. There's a virtual panel on May 18th on promoting leadership and featuring key employees throughout our workforce. Our Aspire group has events going on. That's the group that represents the Asian American Pacific Islander community, and they also are working to reach out to students in the STEM field. So that group does a lot of work, not just at the department, but also reaching out as well. And then we'll continue with the announcements for more events coming up. They are being planned. I think, do we have a slideshow? I think we have a slideshow for this today. Let me see if we have a slideshow for this. Pardon me, I'm wrong. I did not have a slideshow for this. But my wrong line on the note. So we will continue to announce the events to all employees. We really encourage everyone to take part of this. We've had great turnout in our employee affinity groups, as we call them, really across the board supporting each other. And so we hope that all of our employees take advantage of the events that we have for the Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and we'll be posting those and making them available and throughout the department. So I would like to turn over to Evelyn Cortez Davis, who is here to represent Anselmo and the water system, and welcome. And she will give us a quick update on runoff, and also she'd like to make some manager introductions in the water system.
Thank you, Marty. Good morning, commissioners. It is my privilege to bring you this update on behalf of Anselmo Collins. But before I do, if I may, I want to express my personal gratitude to all of you for your vision, in particular to you, Madam President, for the Women's Career and Wellness Expo had such special meaning for me as a woman of color, as a woman in an underrepresented field. It's wrought with meaning to be able to talk to young girls, to women who are looking for opportunities. And I am so excited about this as an annual opportunity for us to expand that. Thank you so much. Regarding runoff preparations for the water system, my report at this point, we have no change from the last board meeting on April 24th. The summary then was provided that we have extraordinary runoff that we are expecting 10% higher runoff than the historical high runoff in 1969. So we are, as of April 1st, 296% of normal. In terms of the expectation and the runoff forecast is based on snowpack and rainfall and stream flow leading into the runoff year. So we have an extensive amount of activities, both infrastructure and communications that have been taking place to get us ready for this. The cool temperatures over the last couple of weeks have slowed down some of the runoff in the Owens Valley, that's Inyo and Mono counties, and there was even some snow at the higher elevations in the last week. But with higher temperatures forecasted over the next few weeks, we expect the runoff to flow in the waterways to increase significantly. So some of the preparation actions that we've taken, the spreading grounds are continuing to be prepared in the Owens Valley. The water operations aqueduct section is hard at work collaborating with a number of other groups to make sure that we are ready to increase that spreading activity. It's continuing in the northern and the southern parts of the aqueduct system, although slightly decreased since the last report, again, based on the variability of the runoff and temperature dependent quantities. The Water Operation Division, both Aqueduct and Metro, are monitoring the supply turbidity to be able to maximize the use of the aqueduct supply for the city demand. Our plant needs to be able to take the amounts of turbidity that may come out, so we are very closely watching that as well. There are 12 30-inch siphons that are currently being put in place at the Tinnemaha Reservoir by a contractor that was selected through emergency contract approvals to allow us to increase the outflow capacity from the Tinnemaha Reservoir during the peak of that runoff. Aqueduct reservoirs have also been lowered in anticipation of the elevated runoff numbers. Long Valley Reservoir, which is Crowley Lake, has been lowered to 98,000 acre feet, and the maximum water level is 184,000 acre feet. So we have some room to spare in anticipation of that runoff to come. This is extremely important. The runoff forecast for this watershed is one of the highest in the Eastern Sierra. We have 15 temporary.
To that point,
Yes,
the 299% or whatever number that we're saying we're above average, it's not smooth across the whole
not
region.
necessarily.
And I think that area is 360 or 380 or something really high.
I can double check the number for you on that specific area. The 296 is the snowpack at our snow survey where we do the snow survey. But you are correct in that the runoff is not necessarily going to be uniform. We are preparing for quite a number of scenarios, and the runoff may not come all at an easy pace. It may come a higher pace depending on the date and temperature. So that's an excellent point, Commissioner. We do have 15 temporary aqueduct and reservoir keepers that we will be bringing on board, expected to start later this month. And they will be with us to help us with the runoff activities or preparations and post-runoff cleanup. They will be with us for a year at will employees to help us to accommodate the additional tasks, significant amount of work that we need to do for this. Like I mentioned, there's a significant amount of community coordination as well. There are meetings that have been held and planned to inform local Innu and Mono County, as well as travelers in the area. As we know, people love to recreate in the Owens Valley. So we want to make sure that they understand the runoff expectations and how best to prepare. We have had a number of media opportunities for interviews to share information. Our own Adam Perez has become somewhat of a local celebrity. He's been interviewed by a number of media channels, but we have been sharing as much information as is possible also on social media channels, in addition to traditional media and print media. We have also been continuing to participate in community runoff preparation meetings with Inyo County, with Mono County, Paradise Community Outreach groups, Bishop City Council, Inyo and Mono County ongoing recreation update and planning meetings are continuing, and ongoing unified command in conjunction with Inyo County are also continuing, and we have a dedicated website, LADWP EasternSierra.com, that is providing ongoing situational awareness reports released every Thursday so that travelers or anyone who is interested in what's going on in the Eastern Sierra can be well informed before they get up there. This includes road and area closures being done in response to runoff concerns throughout the land that is owned by the City of Los Angeles that is managed by LADWP. So in terms of the runoff, again, we're continuing to work hand in hand with our communications team, and it's really all hands on deck, commissioners, at this point, and we are proud of the response so far, and we will continue to keep you updated as we move forward. Switching gears a bit to more local focus, Mayor Bass issued a recommendation letter to City Council concurring with our general manager and his recommendation on March 15th to change the city's emergency water conservation ordinance phase from phase 3 to phase 2. Phase 3 is 2 days a week, is the phase that we're currently in. Phase 2 is 3 days a week, which we had been for a number of years prior to our severe drought condition last year. So the city went into phase 3 back in June of last year, June of 2022, in response to those extreme drought conditions. And now with significantly improved supply conditions, we're recommending to going back to that normal 2 days a week watering, which is phase 2. Sorry, 3 days a week. And we are awaiting council concurrence on that. So we want to give the flexibility back to our ratepayers if council concurs. And lastly, I would like to pause for a moment and acknowledge this, as we manage a very complex water system, our most critical resources are our people. We have a number of key leadership appointments in the water system that I would like to acknowledge and introduce to this board. We have 4 appointments from our water distribution division and 1 from water operations. If I could ask the gentlemen who are here in the room to please stand when I call your name. From water distribution, Mr. Cesar Rubio, promoted to superintendent of our central district. Congratulations. Mr. Joe Powell, promoted to Superintendent of Trunk Line Construction. Congratulations, Mr. Powell. Mr. Jaime Pulido, promoted to Assistant Superintendent of Trunk Line Construction. And Mr. James Griffin, promoted to Assistant Superintendent of the Western District. Gentlemen, congratulations. Last and certainly not least, thank you. In water operations, Mr. Milad Tagavi was promoted to Deputy Director of Water Operations and will be taking over duties as Director of Water Operations when Mr. Andrew Lenar retires this July. Congratulations, Mr. Tagavi. We're so proud to keep that leadership team strong in water for you, and I appreciate you joining me in congratulating everyone for their promotions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Evelyn.
Thank you, Marty.
And lastly, I want to acknowledge someone who's not unfamiliar to the board, but new in the seat, Mr. Simon Zudu. Effective April 26th, was appointed to the position of Interim Senior Assistant General Manager for the Power System. Simon has extensive experience as a power and engineering manager, and he is now responsible for the oversight over the entire power system. And that includes both the power construction, maintenance, and operations side, as well as power engineering and technical services. So, Simon, congratulations and welcome.
Thank you.
Supporting Simon, Nazir Fazli, who was our Director of Corporate Health and Safety, was appointed Executive Director of Power Construction, Maintenance, and Operations. And so, Nazir, thank you very much. And then replacing Nazir in his role, Dan Ashelman is serving as the Interim Head of Corporate Health and Safety, and he was Nazir's assistant previously. Dan, thank you very much. I'd like to welcome them all in their new roles, and they have a lot of work in front of them to do, and we appreciate them taking on the job. So with that, that concludes my report.
I got to pause for your report before.
It really wasn't for me. It was just for the report. So, I'm done. Unless any question, I'm finished. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. I'd also like to take this opportunity to welcome Simon and Nazir to their new roles. I've had the pleasure of working extensively with both of these gentlemen and look forward to their leadership. We will now go to introduction of future motions. I am unaware of any motions that are being offered at this time, or any, yes. So we will move to comments from the ratepayer advocate.
Good morning. I'll have possible comments on the management reports I-1 and I-2. We support the filed item J2 on accounting clarifications. But for appropriate transparency and governance, it might be better if it was approved by a vote on the regular agenda. Since this drives some aspects of the other rate components and also the budget, there may be an appropriate time to vote during the budget approval on that instead. And then item L2, the Guidehouse contract, we have qualified support for that. The intended tasks are appropriate, but the time constraints mean rapidly arranging expert assistance will be important. But we think individual task orders should be disclosed prior to execution to the board and the OPA to allow time for formal consideration if a member of the board or the OPA expresses concern. And then on item L6, we think the motion on reporting is very important. We strongly support it, but it may make sense to defer this or plan further refinements to allow further discussion and comments from various stakeholders.
All right. Do we have any discussion from neighborhood councils?
No community impact statements or formal positions were filed by any neighborhood councils on any of the items on today's agenda.
And then I'm calling item L6 and L2 special. Are there any other items that commissioners would like to call special?
2 and 6.
If not, is there a motion for to approve items L1, L3, L4, and L5?
Move approval. Second.
Would you call the roll?
Commissioner KATZ,
Aye.
Commissioner LEHRER,
Aye.
President McCLAIN-HILL,
Aye.
Commissioner NEEMAN Brady,
Aye.
Vice President RUIZ.
Aye.
5 ayes, motion adopted.
Terrific. If we could then move to management report, and we'll start with L1.
Are you going to read that?
This item will be presented by Jason Rondu and Ashkan Nasiri of System Planning Division.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jason Rondu, Director of Power System Planning. And I'm joined here by Ashkan Nasiri, Manager of Resource Development, and we're here to present on a status update on clarifying the purpose of SCAPA, Southern California Public Power Authority, and review the controls that we have proposed to put into place, and also review a look back of existing contracts that we have done to ensure transparency and accountability and consistency with our existing procurement practices and values. So I'll hand it off at this time to Ashkan to walk us through the presentation.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Ashkan Nasiri. I'm the Manager of Resource Development in Power System Planning Division. Happy to be here today to share with you our progress that we have made in enhancing the approval process for contracts and task orders under the Professional Service Agreement and Goods and Service Agreements through the Southern California Public Power Authority. The additional steps and the new layers of approval are designed to increase oversight, promote transparency, and foster accountability in the use of SCAPA resources. Through these efforts, we are committed to ensuring that the best interests of our stakeholders are being served. Three short sections comprise today's presentation. First section focuses on control and the new approval process. Second part is a look back at the existing task orders. And finally, we end with a brief overview of enhancement that we have done to our power purchase agreements. And we look at the task order that we are planning to issue for further exploring further enhancement to the power purchase agreement process. Our goal is to continuously improve the PPA process to ensure that meets our evolving needs of our stakeholders while maximizing the value delivered to our customers. In response to the board request for increased transparency, oversight, and accountability in using SCAPA task orders, we have been working on a new approval guidelines over the past several months. As part of this effort, we have developed a new process utilizing a new form, SCAPA contract procurement request, that's specifically designed to increase oversight and prevent any circumvention of DWP supply chain services.
Can I ask you a question on the prior slide? Oh, there is, okay, we got a deck that was different.
You have to clarify.
So this is an updated deck. Well, this is the same as.
So, Commissioner, let me clarify. We were going to get to it at a forthcoming slide.
Okay.
There was an updated deck that was provided with additional latest figures, and Ashkan will mention that when we get to that slide. Okay. In the interest of kind of streamlining the presentation, we took out a couple of earlier slides. So that one slide that you have in your printed version does not appear here.
Okay.
The rest of the presentation, I believe, is exactly the same with the exception of updated numbers.
Okay. This is the slide I'm talking about?
Yeah, so that slide is not part of it. That was some background information that, again, in the interest of time and getting to the meat of the presentation, that we took out so we can go straight into the controls and the review that's been done.
Okay.
If you do have questions on any of that content, we'd be happy to answer those questions, though.
All right, why don't we continue with the course that you're going to go through, and then we'll see what questions I have outstanding.
Yep. Sure. Okay, and our goal is to ensure that stakeholders have a clear understanding of the procurement process, and that is conducted in a fair and transparent manner. So to start, a task order requester would start the internal approval process by providing project description and the list of participating members from SCAPA, if there is any, business justification for not utilizing DWP supply services, and cost-benefit analysis to document the operational efficiencies and cost saving through the joint procurement project. We have added the requirements for approval by both AGM of the system that's using the SCAPA resources and DWP's board designee, which happens to be Mr. M. Benjamin at this time. To bring the process even closer to our internal standard, the requester needs to provide budget information to show available funds for the duration of the task order and obtain notice of compliance for work involving expenditure in exceed of $25,000 for labor and professional services. The requester also needs to notify financial service organization and supply chain services of their task order and obtain concurrence to proceed. And supply chain services may elect to participate in the procurement process. We will be distributing a bulletin alongside with the SCAPA contract procurement request form that I talked about. And you see it on the screen. To ensure that all divisions and systems that wish to utilize SCAPA resources are aware of the new process and to enforce its implementation. In addition, a separate letter will be sent to SCAPA to inform them of the new process and to ensure that no action is taken unless an approved SCAPA contract procurement request is provided. And to promote transparency and compliance with DWP standards, in addition to FSO, each system or major organization will maintain a log of their SCAPA managed procurement, membership, subscription, and financing projects. This will ensure that all stakeholders are aware of the procurement process and it can be monitored its progress. Finally, FSO will provide a quarterly report to the board on all ongoing SCAPA managed procurement projects. This will enable the board to stay informed of the progress being made and ensure that the new process is being implemented effectively. This concludes the first section, which was the approval process. And next, we will be looking at the existing task orders. We have collaborated with all involved DWP groups and SCAPA staff to compile a comprehensive database of existing contracts and task orders. The task order under professional service agreement and goods and service agreements are broken into 5 categories shown on this table. On the left column of this table, technical and legal consulting, membership, subscription, and program services. Currently, DWP is participating in 36 out of 155 task order and SCAPA, which is decreased compared to the previous fiscal year when we participated in 90 task orders. You might have a slightly older version of this that shows 37, but this is the updated one, and it's only 36.
So this slide ties in with the other slide of the question, because, you know, I just need to understand somewhat the 36 out of 155, yet a bulk of the dollar expenditures. And in fact, with programs in particular, if you highlight that one, we have 97% of the expenditures in the program bucket. Can you give me an example? What are we talking about?
Sure.
$90 million over 19 contracts.
Right. So I can give you, so here we have basically that dollar amount. Program service agreement is about 37, and again, this is updated from 39, so it's slightly lower.
So an additional 50 or so staying at SCAPA. What are these contracts?
Program service agreements?
Yeah.
These are for energy efficiency for different engineering groups, Wilden Energy Services, different contractors that we have that have implemented DERMS or energy efficiency programs.
Okay. And so going forward, all of those, that whole bucket, as they expire, will go through supply chain? Is that the idea?
I will get to that actually in this slide in 1 second. Okay. About 17 of those are coming.
Well, they're ending, right?
Right, by the end of this year, so then, December 23rd.
I'm kind of confused here because the numbers, so there's 7 contracts that make up 50 million.
So right now there are 36 contracts out of 155 that belongs to us, and 17 of those 36 will either terminate or will brought in-house and advertised.
And 12 of them are in the program service bucket.
Correct.
And that amounts to, you said, 37 million?
Correct. And those are all going to be either terminated or brought in-house.
So then there are 19 minus 12 is 7, right?
I'm sorry?
19 minus 12 is 7, right? So 7 contracts that amount to $50 million. that are still at SCAPA.
Yeah. And for the contracts that are going to be brought in-house, those contracts either don't meet the criteria that is being established for utilizing SCAPA, or they're in a gray area.
Okay.
Meaning when the rules around SCAPA were established for generation and transmission, that was 40 years ago, where distributed resources, energy efficiency were not top of mind.
Contemplated, yeah.
And so that's an example where the clarity that we're establishing now will help hopefully make it very clear. But for those contracts that may not be abundantly clear, we would be moving those in-house. And also supply chain and others would have the ability to review all of that, so that if there happen, the goal is to remove a lot of that unclarity, but where that unclarity exists, there will be additional oversight to have folks decide whether or not that will make sense to be brought into SCAPA. So this is an example of ones that already are clear to be brought in-house. Does that make sense?
Completely. Okay. And I applaud this effort. This is great stuff. I guess what I'm really getting at is there's 7 contracts amounting to $50 million that feels like there's a lack of transparency around. Or I'm not suggesting anything nefarious. I'm just saying that we don't have insight.
We don't understand what it is.
Yeah, we don't understand what it is.
We can certainly put that together with you. An example of the summary of that, the scope, the duration.
Perfect. That'd be great.
Whatever you'd like to see, we can absolutely put that together for you. And I don't think, Ashkan, tell me if it would be difficult to do this. It seems like this is something that we could bring back to you and file at a future board date in the near term.
Perfect.
And we are actually planning on that. So we are doing a complete audit of all the existing contracts, and we will share a executive summary with the board once it's done.
I think, if I may just add a clarification on that. So when we went through this exercise, we put our policies and the SCAPA policies and those contracts that weren't in the gray area, we kind of put them in that bucket. So it would be very, very good for us to have that open discussion about what criteria we used to filter those out, and that'll be a good discussion.
Great. Very good.
And to add to what Aram said, we looked at all these contracts, whether they were procured through competitive process, whether they're compliant with our NOC process, or they have followed our internal procurement requirements. And any contracts or task order that did not meet those requirements are addressed accordingly, either being terminated or brought in-house and re-advertised. And again, we will provide an executive summary to the board once the audit is complete. So in the previous slide, I mentioned that 17 task order will either be terminated or transferred to DWP and advertised through our supply chain services. Here is a breakdown of those contracts. I think we already talked about that. And the largest contribution, as you mentioned, comes from the program services with over $37 million that will be brought in-house. To sum up, in response to Commissioner's concern about procurement through SCAPA, we have created a new approval process to improve transparency and oversight while also preventing the circumvention of DWP internal procurement process. And we are ready to move forward with implementing this new SCAPA approval process. We are also in the midst of finalizing our audits of all current SCAPA contracts and task orders, and any task order that do not meet our competitive selection process, NOC process, or procurement standards will be addressed accordingly. And moving forward, Financial Service Office will provide quarterly reports on SCAPA procured contracts and task orders to this board. At this point, we are moving to our last section of the presentation, which is a brief overview of power purchase agreement. So, as you know, PPA process is very resource intensive, and I'd like to provide a full picture of how DWP staff drives the PPA process from the RFP preparation and advertisement to review and evaluation and selection and negotiations, and a brief overview of the internal resources involved in the PPA process. Starting with RFP development, our utility scale renewable group updates the renewable energy resource RFP at SCAPA based on the resources need provided by the Integrated Resource Planning Group, or IRP, and input from our energy storage group. And they are working closely with the City Attorney Office from the beginning. The responses to the RFP are evaluated by, again, the utility scale renewable team to identify the proposal that have the most value for DWP power system. Those proposals will be scrutinized further by DWP staff and various SMEs to ensure they meet certain criteria.
So, just, I know you know this, but for everyone's benefit, I used to run renewable procurement for Edison. So this is an area that I'm quite familiar with, and it does really take all of this. But the one thing that I saw in my version of the deck, I don't know if it's in your version of the deck, is that you've reduced the RFP duration to 6 months.
Correct.
And so I had thought it was a rolling procurement process. So how is that being refreshed and updated? If something is on the list, are you asking the bidders to then come back and update their bid? How is that going to actually work?
So basically the idea was to get refreshed prices at least twice a year. As you know, the renewable landscape is pretty dynamic and prices are changing. Yeah. And sometimes after a month or so, the developer is not able to honor those prices. So instead of waiting the entire year, we are asking for more frequent updates on the prices.
So it's a refresh of the list, but it's not necessarily a closing, and then you're moving forward with whatever is on
I think, and Ashkan, correct me if I'm wrong, the aspect of the rolling RFP that provides a lot of benefit to the department is the fact that things change often, but we have to balance that against benchmarking projects that were submitted potentially 11 months prior to ones that were recently submitted. So to try to maintain that flexibility, but also have stronger competition and more refreshed pricing, we've shrunk that from 12 months down to 6. It does get renewed each time, and the terms and the existing contract and all of that gets updated as time goes on. And Ashkan and his team, they do ask that the developers put refresh proposals in place. Okay. Some do, some don't, but that allows us to benchmark against more current pricing and have more confidence that if we do pick up a project that pencils out as the top competitive project, that we have confidence that they can actually meet the terms that they've recently submitted. Again, it's a balancing act of trying to maintain that refreshed competition with the flexibility of that contract.
And how transparent is the pricing to the public? So X developer submits a proposal that you may or may not be considering, that may not be public, but are the submissions publicly available, the information related to the submissions?
The evaluation criteria is internal. The pricing becomes public if we execute a contract only if the board approves a contract that we bring to the board for consideration.
Okay.
Okay. Once a project is selected, an exclusivity with the developer is signed, and the term sheet negotiation and the PPA negotiations begins. And this is where our utility scale renewable team, along with these various SMEs, I think I have about 15 different groups here on the screen, and the designated city attorney will spend countless hours negotiating, reading, and redlining the term sheet and subsequent power purchase agreements. In addition to the executive management overview and approval, the approval of such a PPA requires notice of compliance from the labor, Executive Directive 4 from the CAO office, approval of this board, approval of Energy Environment Committee, and approval of the LA City Council and the Mayor's office before our general manager can sign on the dotted line on the PPA. So from the start to approval, there are hundreds, if not more, pair of eyes on the PPA. However, there is another side to the coin when it comes to PPA process, and that's SCAPA. SCAPA serves its member by fostering operational efficiencies, cost savings, and collaborative advocacy through joint procurement and financing initiatives. SCAPA played a pivotal role in streamlining the procurement of renewable energy for its member by issuing the renewable RFP, engaging with developers and managing inquiries and providing comprehensive responses, organizing presentation on renewable projects, facilitating meetings between members and developers, providing legal counsel to ensure sound legal framework for the project, and they additionally provide project management for enhanced oversight. In addition to these, monthly working groups meeting organized by SCAPA offer its member platform to share lessons learned and receive insight from experts on legislative, regulatory, and other relevant topics to utilities. SCAPA conducts project outreach and market research to provide members with information necessary to make informed decisions in the dynamic renewable energy market. And in light of the recent approval of the Inflation Reduction Act, the landscape of renewable energy procurement has undergone significant changes, and SCAPA has diligently kept pace with this evolving regulatory.
So SCAPA has capacity that we don't have in these areas, is what you're suggesting.
So, Ashkan, if I may, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think the answer to that is no. I think that the function that SCAPA provides, we could provide if we wanted to do that. The benefit that we have through SCAPA is the partnership with other utilities. Where that partnership does not benefit us, we would have the choice to bring a contract in-house or do it through SCAPA. We've done that in the past with certain power purchase agreements. Beacon Solar is one example of that, where we actually did that in-house. So to the degree that there are projects that we view SCAPA as not providing an actual benefit to LADWP, we could, and we have in the past, bring those in-house.
There was a lot of people. This is a lot of people.
Yeah. There was just a long list of things that you just sort of detailed that SCAPA provides. And and some of those things are critically important and very strategic. They're not, and so it's really, I'm curious at that level, are we relying on SCAPA for relationships, for understanding sort of the strategic environment in which we're participating, for management of, that range of things that you just talked about?
So SCAPA is one of the resources that we use when it comes to, and SCAPA provides all this.
If I may answer your question directly, no. We are, when we build our power system plan, we identify what resources we need, whether that's wind, solar storage, what type of storage, what year we actually need it, how many megawatts, and potentially even locations, because we would want to, for one example, where we have a transmission line that has access to wind and solar, we would want to identify a wind resource and a solar resource. So the strategic adoption of the different resources is driven by us. The forum that they're submitted is through SCAPA, and our team, and I think we may have some folks here, negotiate that as a lead negotiating side on behalf of the Department of Water and Power, and all of the parties that you see here are very critical support as part of that process. So SCAPA will convene that as part of the negotiation effort. They do have some contract support for very specific renewable contract legal support, but the vast majority of that, including the strategic direction of what projects we want to proceed in, is driven entirely by LADWP. Said another way, if SCAPA identifies a project and they bring it to us and they say, we think this is a good project, it's a good price, other utilities like this, and it's not consistent with what we are interested in, we will not proceed with it.
Okay, thank you for that. That certainly better aligns with how I think it works versus, so I guess I continue to be, and I know that we're also continuing to review and to think about and to look at various aspects of how we work with SCAPA in connection with PPAs. And so I'll be interested in where that lands. I, appreciate that it is an important tool/partner in this work, but continue to have some questions about precisely where that proper role and intersection is. And so I look forward to additional discussion. And as you know, I have a very strong view of the department, its resources, capacity, and responsibility over and against, SCAPA, which is has been an important strategic JPA, but certainly does not have anywhere near the department's capacity to support and move forward our plans and programs. So just, and I'm very cautious about the perception of a shell game where, it's really just us, but we're calling it SCAPA. I like real clarity about when we're acting and when we are aligning and involved in an entity or a relationship that, is not just a stalking horse for us. So this has been, helpful and certainly does provide a significant illumination of all of the work and all of the resources, no pun intended, that are, involved in bringing forward these renewable projects.
Madam President, if I can add exactly the framing that we were going through is SCAPA is also besides the joint power action that we take on joint projects, we have, because we're the balancing authority for two of the members, that gives us the forum also to share information that otherwise the different municipalities will not be able to have, and that gives us the forum for us to have those. But absolutely, if our interests are not intersecting with what we need to do, those projects will be brought solely for LADWP benefits.
There's one function which is needed to be added to this, whether it's with SCAPA or with DWP. And that is current ethics monitoring is not up to the scale for the potential for bad actors. You really need to be tracking principles and carried interests by various parties over time. These projects change hands, sometimes quite frequently. And at certain points in time, like instances of renegotiation or the initial setup of the project, where something can go from little or no value to high value in a very short period of time. It's not possible to easily access some things, like option agreements on land are not often recorded, but there are things that can increase in value substantially as you move forward. And so understanding both the real interests and the carried interests, indirect relationships, and monitoring that over what might be a 5 to 10 year development period and a 20-year operating period, 20 or 30-year operating period, you need to track it regularly because there are instances of value creation at various points in this process. Neither the requirements of the City Ethics Commission nor the requirements of SCAPA are up to that continuous long-term monitoring.
Is that the contract management function then? That where's I know we have that function in-house, but it's just not.
I mean, often the contract management function doesn't really take over until the deal is done initially, and you want to capture this early on. And the contracting ethics requirements in the city are really developed around one-time deals where we're buying paper. So it really needs to be a continuous monitoring of what's going on in terms of changes in ownership, changes in interest, and trying to capture it in that context. And capturing one of the things that gives us anxiety are real estate options that, based on my experience, can be important and very much not transparent.
So thank you, Dr. Pickle. And I was going to mention this later, but I'll take the opportunity now. We want to significantly thank the Office of Public Accountability for the feedback, in addition to the feedback that was just given over the course of the last several years, to help us better our procurement process. So this is important for us because we're very proud of the existing process that we have and the accomplishments that we've done, but this is a very big dollar amount. That is the largest dollar amount of SCAPA. So it's very important to us to make sure that there is oversight and make sure that the process is as good as it can be. So again, we're very proud of this, but we have the humility to know that we have opportunities to continuously improve, whether that improvement comes at the suggestion of the Office of Public Accountability, or whether that comes from existing outside review parties that will be taking a look at our process. So we just have about, excuse me, 2 more slides that will quickly wrap up, and then we can ask any additional, or we can answer any additional questions that you may have.
Jason, could I add one component?
Please do.
The PPA group was working on a potential review and possible improvements to that process with an outside contract. And we think it is good to have perhaps an outside contract to do that independent review. Our key concern is the contracting process is often awarded on a contingent basis, and there's a long negotiation cycle. So the closure on negotiation is often a year or more after the initial bid closings. So there may be refreshes with other contracts, but there's a long gap. And our feeling is it's worthwhile to do a standardized contract with potential minor amendments that might be modified, and those are easier to value and quicker to close.
And we'll talk to that in just a moment, too. Okay. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Pickle.
And Jason, before we leave this slide, obviously it's a very long process to develop and approve and implement the PPAs. I'm just wondering, how long does that process take? Is this a 2-year process, 3-year process?
That's a great question. So I think bare minimum, the negotiation, and Ashkan, please step in. You obviously you've got more experience in this area, but at a very high level, I think minimum is 6 months. If that's a very simple proposal that it takes to negotiate that, and that does not include the approval of this board, the process for the CAO to review, and then council approval.
I'm talking about start to finish, because it's a lot of steps.
Yeah, start to finish is probably about a year in a good scenario.
You can do all this in a year?
Well, there are exceptions to that. There are some contracts where you might have more sophisticated battery operations. When you add batteries and other higher, more advanced technologies, it can get a lot more complex, and there's a lot more nuance. And we can certainly, when we update this board again on the process, on the update of the existing process, we can do a look back at historically how long it's taken us. I will say, though, that it can very highly depend on the technology, on the location, and other terms as well. It can also depend on market conditions. As Dr. Pickle had mentioned, we could be 3-4 months into a contract negotiation, and pricing can change. And you could have a developer say, I can no longer honor that pricing, or we may have to go back and do a refresh of all of our pricing to make sure that at that time we're getting the best price. There are cases where we have negotiated for many months, and that project has fallen out because it is either no longer competitive, or there are other things that may have changed where we have decided that is no longer the best project for the department.
Thank you.
In my opening, I mentioned that our goal is to continuously improve the PPA to ensure that it meets evolving needs of our stakeholders while maximizing the value that we deliver to our customers. Based on the OPA recommendations, SCAPA Renewable RFP implemented requirement for developers to have at least one completed utility scale project. The language requiring bidders to provide experience of their staff on handling renewable energy project has been implemented since 2002. However, the language was improved in the later years, and starting from 2008, SCAPA requires bidders to include previous completed projects. We also started incorporating DWP business policies in the SCAPA renewable RFP. For example, starting 2015, language and requirements for meeting the Los Angeles Municipal Lobby Ordinance were added. Child support policy, compliance with limitations on campaign contribution, and supplier diversity are some of the examples that have been added. Once again, at the recommendation of our Office of Public Accountability, a two-part framework has been adopted to address options to purchase assets. So basically, all ownership options for renewable PPAs will come back to this board for approval. And lastly, $1 buyout option language per OPA recommendation was implemented in 2021.
So that prior bullet frustrates me a little bit because near when I joined the board, we learned about an opportunity to own a facility that the team elected not to pursue. So the board never saw it. And at that point, I said that I wanted all buyout options to be brought to the board, the decision to pursue it and the decision to pass, because the decision to pass is also a multi-million-dollar decision. So it's frustrating to see that the conclusion is that only the option to acquire is being brought.
Commissioner, we will triple check this, but I'm fairly certain that our policies do now include, following that discussion that I think you brought up at least a year ago, if there's any exercising, whether it's to not exercise or to exercise, that is to be brought before the board. If that is not the case, if my understanding is incorrect, we will fix that, because that is my understanding, my expectation as well.
Okay, good. Thank you.
And then I guess for me, that just sort of raises another issue, and that is, and we'll talk about, we will work on this in a very diligent way, but when we talk about what our policies are, what the policies are, where are these policies sitting? And how do we ensure that it is clear and transparent and that anyone can access them? Because I recall very clearly the conversation and the direction around options and how that information is moved forward. And so, boards change and, staff changes. And so I'm very curious and want to understand how, notwithstanding change, that there is an easily accessed place to refer to that reflects the operating policies of the department, and that we get a whole lot clearer about where some of this sits.
Yep. So what I am understanding from this is we want to make sure as an organization that as boards change, as personnel changes, that it's not just a word of mouth that these policies are adhered to. So what we can do is when we update this board next time, we can describe how we are memorializing these policies and these procedures and how we expect to make sure that they're adhered to, because I do hear the concern, which is especially on not acting on an option, if folks don't understand what their roles and responsibilities are, there could be a risk of us not in bringing that to board, unintentionally, but not bringing that to board. So we will make that very clear of how we're going to memorialize that and how we'll put that into place.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
One addition on this. We think the RFP, including a $1 buyout option, shouldn't be the hard and fast alternative. The first reason is the tax code is written in pencil these days. And the rules surrounding having a fixed buyout like that at minimal value could be quite expensive other ways. And we continue to recommend that there will be alternatives for the buyout, either from no buyout or buyout at fair market value to certain fixed components. I think not bidding the option alternatives could allow us to make mistakes that are expensive to us. So we suggest bidding alternatives on that.
Yep. Dr. Pickle, I think that we've incorporated some of what you just said, but I may have heard a few things that we would have to double check to make sure that that's incorporated, and we can certainly do that, because I think what you're suggesting is that there could be options that are submitted to us that are not the optimal to us, and we would want to have visibility into that to potentially choose those options. So what we'll do is we'll go back, we'll make sure that those were looked at and evaluated, because I know that we did evaluate the $1 buyout, but those additional suggestions that you just gave, we'll take a look at that.
Yeah, and the tax lawyers need to be involved in any of these. Okay. And talking to a tax lawyer too much will cause manic depression, so.
And a heavy bill.
And a heavy bill. Well, it's part of the depression. And delay.
Good, thank you. Thank you.
And in 2023, the RFP duration was reduced to 6 months to ensure proposals are updated at least twice a year instead of once a year. And these are some of the examples of improvement that we have made to our PPA process over the years. And lastly, we do keep the board informed of our renewable procurement status by sharing the renewable portfolio standard master list and periodic updates through the strategic long-term resource plan. We believe that we have a very robust PPA process that has produced over a dozen successful projects like Red Cloud Wind, Northern Portfolio Geothermal, and Springbok and Eland Solar. But we are open and eager to better our process and learn from the best practices in industry. And I know that Commissioner NEEMAN BRADY is also interested in exploring means to optimize our process and increase our effectiveness. During the first quarter of 2022, we proposed a task order to engage an independent third party to evaluate and benchmark our PPA process against industry practices. The objective was to identify areas for improvement and streamlining in our procurement process. Additionally, we wanted to explore the advantages, disadvantages, and risk of procuring utility-scale renewable resources internally through our supply chain services. And I'd like to, again, thank the Office of Public Accountability for spending time with us, with our staff, preparing the task order, and also our input, your input on all the PPAs that we do. Unfortunately, we were unable to secure the necessary approval in time, and the enabling contract that we were going to use for issuing a task order expired in October of last year. However, we are prepared, and we are ready to advertise this task order as soon as a new enabling contract is in place. And we will definitely share the result and the findings in this independent review with the board.
What's the timeline then?
So the updated estimated board date is either the second board date in June or the first in July. Assignment, is that correct?
Correct. This is a contract for professional services, where we bring in a bench of contractors for the next 5 years. We are in the last stages of completing that process. We'll be here late June or early July. That's our target date.
Okay. Isn't it just one entity, though, that would be doing this work?
Correct. The way the contract works is task order proposal is going to be advertised to all the bench contractors, and the best fit proposal will be selected as part of that task order. So it's a task order based contract.
Okay, I understand.
The only thing I'll say about this is, and I know that we have a new, head of supply chain services, but so much of what needs to happen at this department is delayed or interrupted or, significantly failed by our supply chain services procurement process. And it's not enough to just acknowledge that it's broken. We have got to get it fixed. It is, even as we look at the SCAPA sort of review process, and we are tightening and implementing new procedures around it, I have to, it would be unfair not to acknowledge that some of the diversion of contracting to SCAPA was a response to the internal difficulty of getting contracting here. And there is rarely a time that I am talking to folks who are doing managing significant projects within this department that they are not pointing to a lack of resources or a lack of urgency, and not even urgency, really just timely processing of, or the timely movement through procurement of services in order to get work done. It's not right, and it is not, it's just not fair. It does not have to be this way. It is the height of what people find to be the worst about government. It's what people make, when they point to government inefficiency and not being able to get anything done, and the private sector being so much better, it comes down to that. So I will be really looking forward to and expecting some significant overhaul of how we deal with supply chain and with procurement. We can't keep doing this. And I know this project has been, we've been waiting for, it feels like a year.
It's been a year.
And every meeting, we're looking at folks who are, who are literally handcuffed because this has not gotten across the finish line. So, I just, we have to determine what our priorities are and what the impacts are of not addressing certain critical, choke points in our operations, and supply chain services is a critical choke point, has been for a long time. Okay. Was that your last slide?
That's my last slide. Yes, before concluding our presentation, I'd like to express my gratitude and appreciation for all of our internal SMEs and stakeholders from various divisions and groups. You saw that picture. Minimum 15 different groups who have dedicated countless hours for supporting our renewable PPA's effort. And a special shout out to the City Attorney Office for spending a lot of time supporting our renewable power purchase agreements. And I'd like to also extend my thanks to SCAPA for providing the data on the contracts and task orders, and as well as their support for the PPAs. And finally, I'd like to acknowledge our utility scale renewable team, who some of them are present here today. If you please stand up. for their unwavering support and tremendous effort in all of our PPAs to date and moving forward, as well as their significant contribution and development to our new SCAPA process. And with that, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Okay. Appreciate the work that you've brought forward. I especially appreciate the update to our utilization, around our utilization of SCAPA for general contracting, and the work that's been done to bring that into alignment with both the actual purpose of the entity and the and the department's structure, the department's actual work and legitimate sort of oversight of its own contracting process. I will look forward to either seeing how those practices are memorialized in some way that we can be clear. And frankly, I guess this just speaks to, Marty, what you've referred to previously in other contexts, just a general lack of formalized policy.
Right.
Which is something that, we cannot operate an organization of this magnitude without. So I'll be interested in seeing how that is moving forward, sir.
I think we have a lot of things that are practices that we call policy, but they're not really adopted just by the board necessarily. And if they were, there's done a long time ago and not really been renewed or looked at since then. So it's probably would be good for us to put a policy together based on this for the board to adopt, so we have something that's current and a guideline that can stand as a guideline and not just be the way that we've always done it, but the way that the board's approved for us to do it.
Yeah, and I think there's sort of a hierarchy. Not every policy needs to be formally adopted by this board. There are those policies that the board will, take as its own and adopt, but there should be independent standing policy that is available and accessible to the organization, so that if someone is in a job and they're doing performing a function, they can look and see, and we can also train around. So I think that there just needs to be some real thought about how that gets stood up in the organization, so that we don't have a bunch of bulletins or memos or conversations substituting as policy documentation. So I look forward to seeing that, and with that, appreciate very much this presentation, and do want to recognize that we spend a lot of time, or have, at least it feels like in my tenure, addressing and correcting or responding to mistakes or shortcomings or identified problems of the past, and some of this relates to that. But I do want to acknowledge the tremendous professionalism and the diligence and, frankly, the integrity of so many people in this department who, continue to work very hard to drive the city's agenda, to drive the department's agenda. And I am often impressed, and this is one of those times, with the thoughtfulness with which you respond to questions and to directions. So thank you very much, and each and every one of you who's contributed to this presentation. I appreciate it.
Great. Thank you very much.
All right. And now to L2.
Yeah.
This is Power System Day.
Okay. Good morning, commissioners.
Sir.
Okay. This presentation is to provide an update on LADWP's recent progress on work related to and customer communications as well on priority one pole inspections and repairs specifically. Over the past few weeks, LADWP has mobilized all available resources to expeditiously fix and all priority one poles that require immediate repairs. In addition, contracts were activated to supplement the work being performed by LADWP forces. And as a result of these efforts, a number of poles requiring safety-related repairs have been reduced by almost 85%. And we are on track to meet our commitment of bringing the backlog of the auto compliance poles to zero by May 16th of 2023. That's great news. One outstanding observation within this period is the level of collaboration that took place within the department by various divisions across the organization. I would like to start with the Power Transmission and Distribution Division, the Power Systems Engineering staff, the LADWP's Communications Office, and the Customer Services Division, who spent a lot of time in communicating with our customers as well as supporting this effort and to speed up the repair process. I would like to bring special recognition to our crews, however, who rose to this challenge and occasion and who have tirelessly worked 7 days a week, and they're still doing so today as we speak, to help us reach this milestone. It is a great demonstration of what can be done when we come together and resolve issues here within LADWP. So I would like to express my sincere gratitude to each and every one of them and salute them for the hard work that they do on a daily basis. Power System has provided the City of Los Angeles services of providing power for more than 100 years. And in doing so, reliability and safety have always been part of the mission statement for this organization. And to that end, I would like to reaffirm to everyone that when it comes, we'll uphold public safety, we will uphold employee safety, and uphold the safety of our assets and infrastructure as part of our day-to-day operations and day-to-day practices. To go into the details of the presentation, I would like to turn it over to Nazir Fazli to continue this discussion. Nazir.
Thank you, Simon. Good morning. To clear all of our backlog of our priority one jobs, we dedicated 26 crews, up to 55 crews working every day, including weekends. We used other resources to get qualified personnel to add additional crews. We also added 3 contracts to supplement our efforts to achieving our goals. As Simon said, our goal is to have zero backlog by May 16. To monitor our progress, we launched an interactive map that shows the geographic location of all of the poles, and this information is available for public also. They can track the completion of the jobs in their neighborhoods. This slide shows the deployment of our contract crews. For example, contract 1, they mobilized last week, and they have 4 crews working on Monday, and they have another additional 4 crews are expected to start on Wednesday for a total of 8 crews. Contractor 2, they're mobilizing today. They are supposed to start 8 crews tomorrow. And contractor 3 are mobilizing also, and they will start with 8 crews on Thursday. There's going to be a total of 24 crews, contract crews, assisting our crews to achieve our goals. This slide shows the progression of the completion for all the backlogs. If we look at the very far left, we can see that beginning of April, end of March, we had 1,448 open priority one jobs. Our crews made a significant decrease in the numbers. As of Monday, we had 242 open cases, open job priority ones. As of this morning, the number was down to 230. 2031. At this rate, we will make our target date of 0 priority 1 by May 16. And moving forward, to maintain compliance and to make sure that our priority 1 jobs remain at 0, the process will be, as soon as a priority 1 job is created, it will be assigned to electric trouble. A patrolman will evaluate the job. They will make permanent repairs if they can and close and complete the job. If the job is too complex, they will make temporary repairs and make the job safe, so it's no longer a hazard, and it will be reclassified to a lower priority job. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Joe for public-facing communications.
Good morning, Commissioners. I wanted to share with you the communications activities that we used in partnership with Power System to alert our customers as to this issue. This was responding directly to the board's requests during our previous meetings, as well as the request received from the mayor shortly thereafter. I just wanted to briefly mention that coincidentally we had touched on power line safety and downed wire safety in our March all-customer email and newsletter that's accompanying with all of our bills. I included this because I wanted to let you know that we have touched on this issue and we do communicate about it regularly to our customers, especially in advance, during, and after windstorms or rainstorms. So that's something we will continue, and that's a part of our effort ongoing to review and to enhance those efforts moving forward. In addition to that, when we were amplifying this issue of the priority 1 power poles, we immediately began running ads and posts on social media, that's paid promoted ads on social media, to reach as many customers as possible. We also worked quickly to put together a letter to notify all customers who either lived or worked at properties that were adjacent to these poles. For all of the poles that we had at that time when we began this effort, if you recall, it was approximately 800 poles, assuming that there's 3 to 4 properties that would abut a pole. In most instances, sometimes they're residential, sometimes they're commercial. We ended up generating almost 3,000 letters that went out and were hand-delivered. I especially want to thank Armando Bolivar and his whole team from customer service and meter services that went out and delivered these and hung them on the doors directly of all customers. That effort was completed over a Sunday and briefly some follow-up on Monday prior to your last board meeting. The letter also was multilingual. As you can see, it included 8 language references where individuals could call and speak to a customer if they needed language access to have the notice read to them in their language, in their native language. Also, we briefed and provided information to our customer service reps in order to support calls that they received to the call center, as well as providing information to Matt Hale and his team for the mayor and council staff. The letter was also, sorry, next slide. The letter was also converted to email. We matched all of those property addresses to our email database and emailed customers who had remaining pole issues at their properties that required the attention of our crews. Going to the map for just a moment, I wanted to show you that map. I think many of you have seen it. It has a specific information in our messaging around the priority 1 pole repairs, has an actual map of the city where you can zoom in and click on an individual pole, learn where that pole is located, as well as a running count. This count, thankfully, with a lot of help from our IT system, our communication staff, Michelle Figueroa and Wee Chow specifically, I want to call out for their quick work in getting this map done. This was originally estimated to be a 2.5-week project that was done in a day and a half. So major thanks to them for this effort. It also, every day, is updated with the current poles remaining to be repaired count. If a pole is repaired, it comes off the map. That number, as you know, this morning would reflect the number that Nazir shared shortly ago. If that number came in after 5 a.m., it would reflect yesterday's letter. We created a shortcut to it. It's LADWP.com/priority repairs. We then went to amplify the map and issued a press release about it. Shared that as well on our website. Our homepage here is linked to that map along with the messaging. And we shared that press release both on social media as well as in our Nextdoor community awareness platform that we use. to get information out to community groups especially. After the pole repairs are completed, we have a closeout letter that is ready to go. We expect to mail that next Wednesday, following the 16th Tuesday. It will also have 8 languages accessibility, letting customers know that either permanent or temporary repairs have been made, and this issue has been addressed. I'd like to turn it back over to Nazir for continued discussion on this item.
Thank you, Joe. So this slide shows the number of priority 2 jobs. These are the total number of priority 2 jobs broken in 4 different levels of urgency, if you will. So a 2A is requires a attention within 6 months. Anytime outside of that, we will be non-compliant. So a total of 76,830 fix-it tickets, priority 2, we have identified so far. So our plan is to look for any duplicates, remove the duplicates, isolate all of the backlogs, meaning that these are outside of the compliance window jobs, prioritize the jobs based on the severity, the impact, and probability of failure, and prioritize those. And based on, when we have all that information, then we can accurately estimate exactly how long it will take us to eliminate all of our priority 2 backlogs. Currently, with the information we have, we estimate with the available resources, we can reduce our priority 2 backlogs to 0 within a 12-month period. But once we have all the information put together and analyzed, we'll have a more accurate information for the board, and we're planning to present on that next month.
So the 2D ones are ones you don't know? Is that what's clear?
Oh, I'm sorry. So priority 2 jobs are broken into 4 different levels based on the severity and location of the pole. For example, 2A poles are located in high fire threat districts, and 2D they are very at the bottom of the priority because they pose very little or very little significance of impact if something fails. So they are lower priority. So we have longer period of time to pay attention to those poles.
And the column says duration to complete jobs.
Yeah,
so it
that's
makes
the
it sound
regulated duration, right?
The
It's like
regulated
how,
duration.
So what's not shown here is the backlog. So this is total tickets.
That's correct.
Like how many of the 6-month tickets are beyond 6 months? How many of the 12 months? Are you still calculating that, or do you have those numbers?
We are still calculating those, yes.
We're doing a full data analysis of all the 76,000 plus records. It's time consuming. We're trying to categorize them by type of work, part of the city, so that it would be much easier for us to package it and provide it to our own forces that will be working on those. And in addition to that, to provide a better direction to our contractors on what type of work needs to be done. Once we have that data, it will be easier for us to measure how long it would take and what type of efforts is going to be involved to finish them. So we are in that data analysis mode. For the last 2 weeks and 3 weeks, we've been fully, I think, immersed in priority 1 repair jobs and how we can expedite the process. As soon as that's a phase is over, we'll be fully focused on priority 2s.
And so for the priority 2s, just to be extra clear, when you say within a year, we'd be at 0 backlog, that basically means we'll be at 0 that are past due. So we'll still have fix-it tickets, they're scheduled out, but none of them will be past this duration that's on the slide. Okay.
We'll be focusing specifically on backlog jobs that within this priority. Yeah.
Thank you.
And every day we get more inspection reports, so there's always different priorities.
It's going to be a changing
We get 1 or 2 or 3 priority 1s and some 2s, and then when they do pole repairs, they're also catching the entire pole. So a lot of times, when they clear a priority 1 at a pole, there will be sometimes several other priority 2s or other priorities on that same pole that'll get caught at the same time.
Great.
So as of this moment, your expectation is that we would be within compliance within a year, but that you will have better refinement of that information, and also once you've completed a more detailed analysis. So it may be sooner than a year based on your analysis. And also, as I understand it, and I think to Marty's point, as you've been undertaking the clearance of priority one tickets on poles, you are also clearing the entire pole. So to the extent there are priority two tickets on those poles, you're clearing those. And you'll start working the priority two tickets in a focused way.
Correct.
Immediately after, like May 17th, right?
Correct. We can start working on the 2As. Those are the ones with a shorter duration. We can focus on those until the data is cleaned up and we are ready for the rest.
Then I have just one other question. These are fix-it tickets. So those tickets, we have it's been indicated that there are often multiple tickets on a pole. So that 76,000 represents tickets, not poles. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And do you have an understanding at this moment as to how many poles are involved, or is that?
Yes, approximately 42,000 polls are involved with those 76,000 tickets.
Okay. All right, thank you, that's helpful.
For instance, one of the comments that came up, and I can't remember if it was 2A or 2B, but there's actually more tickets listed than there are polls in that fire zone, so it's just hard to say. And a typical time, I've seen polls come in with a priority one repair, and it may have 5 or 6 or 7 priority two repairs associated that are also accomplished. So, but that's, when they finish with the data, we'll get a lot more narrow idea of what we're facing.
So I just want to say thank you for this information because I feel much more comfortable than I did a month ago. And I want to give a shout out to the communications team because I did get an email. I went to the website, looked at the counter, and I thought it was very easy to understand. But my question comes to, obviously, public safety is a concern, but also worker safety is a concern. So I want to know, May 16th, next week, does that mean that our crews will stop working 7 days a week, 12-hour day? Because that's a lot. And I worry about, if people are exhausted, then you can have, accidents, so.
Our crews aren't doing that, are they?
They have overtime available for them to work. It is voluntarily that they can work 7 days a week but they are closely monitored for signs of fatigue and exhaustion by their supervision. Their frontline managers are actively involved in observation to make sure exactly what Commissioner you're saying that is not occurring. So as of right now, they have operated without having any injuries, any incidents, and there's a lot of close supervision going on out in the field.
Right? And in general, the fact that we have crews 7 days a week does not mean it's the same individual all 7 days.
Exactly.
You're staggering.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Okay.
Not that our crews aren't working. I meant that we don't have people that are working 7 days a week, 12 hours a day as a regular part of this program.
That is available. It's very few employees may be doing that, but they are not all of our employees.
Okay, because last time it was reported, not today, but last time it was reported, it made it seem like we have these people out there working 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, and they weren't getting a break. So I'm glad to hear that's not the case.
We were able to bring in a bunch of contracts.
Right.
Yes. I guess that was the point because, yes, that was brought up last time and the department was able to manage. One of the ways that we've managed our workforce commitment to this program is through the utilization of contractors to address that specific issue.
Well, I'm really pleased with this report. Thank you. Very helpful information.
Thank you. Just one more slide. This addresses our public safety efforts. Last month, we launched our public safety program. This includes creation of a public safety group within corporate health and safety. Their responsibility is to investigate any incident that could potentially expose any members of public to any injuries, serious injuries or fatalities. And they are looking for root causes, contributing factors, and they will identify any areas for improvement, work with the divisions to make sure that that corrective actions are completed in a timely manner and prevent reoccurrence. Also, if there is a public injury, they will investigate those injuries the same level as employee injuries, and will identify how we can improve the process so we can prevent reoccurrences. In addition to, as far as public outreach, in addition to everything corporate communication is doing, excuse me, we're also ramping up our safety outreach education. This is an interactive visual demonstration. It's a safety demo. We attend all of the public gatherings, the schools, elementary schools, and we educate public as far as the hazards of wire down or any abnormal conditions with electricity and how to deal with those situations. So we're ramping that up, so we will do those events more frequently, so that will be available. With that, I will turn it over to Simon.
Okay. Next item is something that's...
Excuse me, if I could just I would need to know who exactly to call, because I have this issue with the school in our neighborhood where there's a bunch of trees that are hanging over the wires, and I've called multiple times the general number. So I just want you to know, and the school also can't handle it. There's too much going on. And the other question I had was, for those of us who have underground wires, which is fair, we didn't get the memo. I'm assuming because we didn't get it. So just, letting you know might be good to, I can give you some addresses of people I've checked with, but they didn't get anything. So just we're double, triple checking why. Especially
The only people that received notification were those people who had poles either on or adjacent to their property that had priority 1 repairs that needed to be made. So if you didn't get anything, it means you don't have a pole that is in that.
Yes, I know, but I have 2 adult children that do have them, so.
But they didn't
No, it's
have
not everybody who has poles. It's only if your pole was out of compliance.
Yes.
Okay, so then the assumption is that all the poles are being checked. So I
Yeah.
can go to bed and think
Yes.
my grandkids are not going to get fried. Okay.
If you did not receive a notice,
I mean, no, it's that because I'll send you a few pictures of certain conditions I'm just curious about. That's all. I really am impressed how fast this all came together. And the graphics are always really clear and they're great. So I apologize for that.
Okay, no problem.
Commissioner, I wanted to also let you know, I'm sorry if you had that experience when you called, because you shouldn't have. We do get requests and reports from customers, and we'll see them on social media. And we literally send those over same day to Electric Trouble, and they'll dispatch a crew that day to go check it out. So if you would like to share that address, we can follow up.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Part of our action plan related to this topic is cross-cutting topics that would help us in the future, not only to improve, but to sustain the type of improvement that we would like to see. The first topic here is human resources needs. This is a topic that we have discussed in the past, but I would like to bring it. Since the power system is going through unprecedented changes and transition, the next 5, 10 to 15 years, we are expected to meet and exceed a lot of requirements and changes. The Power System Reliability Program, which is our flagship program for upgrading aging infrastructure, would need a lot of work. We are constantly updating our targets to make sure that the aging infrastructure is replaced and restored. We have a lot of work in the new business area. Los Angeles is growing. Economically, it's doing very well. And as a result, LADWP has to provide the necessary service to keep the businesses active with power. Electrification is another topic. The transportation electrification sector is expected to grow, and we have to we have to increase our capacity to be able to support that. operations and maintenance throughout all our facilities would need additional personnel to support us as we are migrating into and transitioning to newer technologies. Upgrading of our transmission assets. We have made several presentations to the board on the work that's needed on the transmission assets. It's the same number of people that will be working on these transmission assets. Modernizing the grid, automating the grid, added regulatory requirements on us, and meeting some of our customer expectations would also put pressure on human resources. So in general, we have to do more when it comes to hiring and training our existing employees, to the extent possible, limiting our reliance on contractors, and how can we retain our best employees. Our employees are perhaps regarded as the best in the industry, and we need to have some type of change in the way we approach this topic. And we thought as an action plan, it's a constant topic that we need to address in the future.
If I may add a couple more comments. Thank you, Simon, for kind of framing it. But this issue has been a topic of discussion with our partners, the labor meeting that we just had. We had this extensive conversation about how we need to get out of this mode of constantly backfilling positions with classes that takes 3 years, 4 years for that skilled workforce to be developed in our systems, both water and power and everything else Simon described. So the challenges in front of us, and I'll start with the comment that was made on the safety thing. The safety of the employees and the safety of the public is not for negotiations, period. And that has to be, for us, has to be in everything we do. That has to be the number one thing, that we want to make sure that our employees are always safe when they're out doing the work, and our public is protected in everything that we do. So having said that, everything Simon described is challenges that we are up to perform, whether it's electrification, introduction of technologies, renewing our infrastructure, that we've been in business for over 100 years. Our infrastructure is aging on both water and power. We can do all the renewal as we do the transformation of all our infrastructure. These are challenges that are ahead of us, and we must be ready for emergencies, whether it's earthquake, floods, heat waves, whatever. We can do all these things, except the fact that we cannot do these without our well-trained employees and in a healthy organization. And we've been talking with our Local 18, with Gus and the team, on how we can partner in making sure our processes of recruiting, hiring, training qualified employees are not something that we're going to be stumbling through as we staff up, to make sure that we step up to these challenges. From classification of utility workers, classifications to examinations, any one of these topics that we've discussed has certain I wouldn't call it barrier, but challenges for us to be coordinated, to make sure that the city departments and us are all working together to make sure that we are meeting those goals that we have. It's a constant topic on our minds every day, but one thing that we talked about is we cannot be in this situation without figuring out some innovative ways for us to get out of this. And I think depending on the partnership with labor, depending on the partnership with our city departments to figure this thing out with your leadership, with the mayor's office leadership, and we can do this and we must do this. This is the core of our strategy moving forward. So I just want to, I know Simon put this bullet down, but it's something that we wanted to kind of say that this is one of the cornerstones of what we need to do. Again, safety is its own category that we want to make sure we never lose track of that. But this issue of staffing is going to be something that we're going to almost declare as an emergency situation, and we need to act like it's an emergency situation. Otherwise, When we hire people and we have retirement waves coming in, we're always going to be in this situation, and none of us want to be in that situation going forward. So I just want to emphasize that now that it's out of my chest, I feel much better.
I do want to say a little bit about that. It's under the organizational accountability bullet, which is important. I just want to make sure that we elevate where that accountability lies in this organization, because you are right. We have been talking about this for, ad nauseum. And we are definitely at a place where, it is almost palpable. The organization is, near buckling under the weight of all that is being required. And it's all essential and excellent and frankly non-negotiable work. And we don't have a choice about meeting the city's needs as it relates to electrification, and we don't have a choice about reinvigorating our infrastructure, both water and power, or preparing to and executing our strategies to address climate change as it relates to water resiliency. These aren't options. These are things we have to do. We cannot do these things unless we are able to overcome the significant barriers to staffing at this agency. And again, it's one of those things where in quiet rooms, all of the people that are doing this work will, look at us with pleading eyes and point to the time it takes to onboard someone and the degree to which, and I know that Commissioner Neiman Brady's head's almost exploded as we look at onboarding and then losing people, and what we have is a net like zero, in some cases net losses. So as it relates to where this has to get resolved, there's nobody in this organization that isn't sitting at this dais that can address this issue. And so I would expect to see some report back in the next 30 days that addresses what progress has been made with respect to how we are going to proceed with hiring, training, and retaining our employees. And that is a conversation that includes labor and, as is indicated, that includes city departments and city leadership. I just want to put that out there, because the rest of this doesn't, we either solve that issue or we significantly scale back our aspirations, because we cannot do it all. And we certainly can't do it all protecting the health and safety and welfare of the public and our employees. That is clear. So, Marty, that is a challenge that I am laying directly at your feet. And as I said, the rest of the folks at this dais, there are many voices that can contribute to this conversation. I know that our Office of Ratepayer Advocate has been a critical contributor. You just have to get louder, and there have to be results associated with these discussions. You have other bullets?
Yes. Additional organizational accountability factors include transparency, where we'll be providing monthly reports or quarterly reports to the board on progress that we're making on priority ones as well as priority two jobs. And last but not least, we'll look into and evaluate technologies that we can deploy for easier and more intuitive collection of data when it comes to inspection, maintenance, data analysis, and reporting. I think we're trying to use this opportunity to improve the way we do business is going to be extremely important, and we'll set up a team to look for technologies, talk to other utilities on best practices and experts to make sure that LADWP significantly improves in this area. With that, I think that concludes our presentation, and we'll be very happy to entertain any questions you may have.
A couple questions.
Yes.
First, on communications, as new priority ones pop up, will the existing map be used to highlight where those are located?
As new priority ones pop up, they will be addressed within 24 hours. So the issue there, frankly, is a question of timing and data, and we don't want to put bad information out there. So this was created with the intention of raising awareness around the backlog while we cleared it. But those priority one polls will be cleared in one day.
All it takes is a good windstorm to generate more priority ones than we can do. So I just wondered if it would be used in an instance like that.
I think it's an operational issue as to whether those priority ones would be cleared within 24 hours or whether you'd be out of compliance or not.
Correct.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like the real answer is haven't thought about that. And as we move forward, now that the department has the capacity to put up an interactive map as part of a communication strategy, there may well be times in the future when utilizing that map that capacity would make sense. And that's certainly something that we should be thinking through.
It might also, in cases like storms, it might make sense to think about integrating with the existing outage map to have downed equipment or things that are emergency related be shown alongside the outages that the department is dealing with.
The data that's fed to the online map is an issue that we're definitely working on with Simon and his team.
Great.
The other question is, you've worked these down, I think, faster than most people expected. What did you learn and what were you able to do to accelerate this? And were there surprises in what you were able to accelerate or ways you were able to accelerate?
I think the biggest lessons learned is to make sure that we keep an eye on these numbers on a regular basis, to make sure that they're addressed in accordance with the compliance requirements. We will not be in this situation again because this is something that we need to do on a daily basis. And the assurance I would like to give you is that we'll be looking at this, not only reporting, but on a daily basis. We look at these numbers to make sure that they're at the level that they're supposed to be.
I would offer as well that the presence of significant contracting resources is what's enabled the department to actually take these numbers down as quickly as they have, in addition to better management and oversight and direction of crews, which goes to the sustainability of the work that we're doing in this regard, and why dealing with the hiring issue becomes the staffing issues become so important. Without proper staffing, we can't both do this work and address all of the other work in the timeframes that are reasonable and expected by customers.
So Dr. Pickle raises an excellent question. So after May 16th, I would like to see a debrief and kind of an analysis of what were the lessons. Because I know we're putting you on the spot today and talking off the top of your head, but kind of a more in-depth analysis so we can make sure that this never happens again.
Correct.
And excellent report today.
We'll do that.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Oh, just one additional thing. This just relates to communications. Just given the age of our infrastructure, I do want to make sure that we are thinking about, how that would drive a robust communications plan around making sure that our customers are always alert and aware. It's the likelihood or the potential of issues either around water or power, is exacerbated by the fact that our infrastructure is just old. And so I just want to kind of put that out there, and also I'm interested in the methods that we use to communicate, especially with certain parts of our customer base. Commissioner Lair has repeatedly pointed out that not everybody's online. And for those people who aren't online, they're also not on Instagram. So, thinking about how we leverage community-based organizations, how we leverage, gathering spots and places where people, sort of just how we're present in people's environments and in their lives in a way that they have access to and get these really important messages is something I'd like to make sure that we are thinking about so as to reduce the likelihood that we have accidental encounters, in ways that produce really, tragic results. Okay? All right. Thank you for that. We have filed items, minutes, and then 2 items called special before we go to into closed session. So I think we can dispose of those relatively soon and then take a break before closed session. Any questions on any of our filed items? So looks like none. We have minutes, K1, 2, and 3. Is there a motion to approve?
Move approval for minutes of April 4th, our special meeting, April 25th special meeting, and April 25th regular meeting.
Second.
Would you call the roll?
Commissioner KATZ?
Aye.
Commissioner Lair?
Aye.
President McCLAIN-HILL?
Aye.
Commissioner NEEMAN Brady?
Aye.
Vice President RUIZ?
Aye.
5 ayes, motion adopted.
Terrific. That takes us to item L2. I know that I asked for it special. I also know that both Dr. Pickle and Commissioner NEEMAN Brady have been significantly engaged in dialogue around this item. Are there, Dr. Pickle, you indicated that you had some recommendations, or actually articulated some recommendations about the ways in which these task orders might move forward. So I just wanted to address that a little more fulsomely, and also to get some feedback from Power System, so that if necessary, we can add that amendment to the item as a part of moving it forward.
Our suggestion was that individual task orders should be disclosed prior to execution to the board and the OPA with enough time for the board members and or the OPA to respond before formal consideration. And this is just as a way to monitor how the contract is being used.
Commissioner? Yeah. Okay. Do we need any, I'm sorry, let me back up. Do we need a presentation? Would any board member like a presentation, a brief presentation on this item before we continue? No, okay. Then I agree. I guess I'm a little, it's a little fuzzy to say, task order should be disclosed prior to execution to the board in time for formal review or formal consideration. So it seems to me that in time for formal consideration should be 30 days. Is that something that's acceptable?
That's doable, and we can meet that deadline. Yes.
One of my concerns is you have something that's an emergency situation, and you need to get somebody quickly. I want to make sure you have that flexibility, and it's one of the benefits of a bench contract like this.
Yeah, that's why, actually, when you said 30 days, that's actually, seems like maybe a long period of time, but.
Well,
I said 30, so, then, yeah, he agreed.
Right, but when he
But
acknowledged,
yes.
agreed to it,
Yeah.
fair enough.
Our task orders are pretty much predefined, so we can provide information on those task orders in advance. Prior to execution of those, we can make a brief presentation or any
Well, except that,
documentation.
I guess that, so just to be super clear, if something is disclosed to the board, that typically takes place in the context of a board meeting or something that is formal in that regard, which by its very nature creates some, gives you some time horizon that's going to be a couple of weeks to a month. Which makes that kind of what you two are suggesting, your concerns with respect to there being more nimbleness built in. It just seems like that's tough to do
I'm trying to
in
think
less
of-
than 30 days.
I'm trying to think of alternatives like disclose to the chair and the head of the audit committee or something like that.
It could be the audit committee and OPA, and 2 weeks would be very doable in that regard, from that perspective, in terms of a time frame. You would simply be ensuring that there is OPA consideration, not necessarily, and to the extent that there is some reason to drive a conversation beyond the audit committee, that is certainly something that the OPA would be capable of doing. Does that work?
And the chair of the audit committee for that.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Okay. Now we need an amending motion, correct?
Yes. Should we do it now, or?
Yes.
So we would have an amending motion to have the task order disclosed to the audit committee and the OPA, I believe it was 2 weeks, is that right? For 2 weeks before
execution.
Before it would be executed.
All right, so I make that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Would you please take roll on the amending motion?
Commissioner KATZ?
Aye.
Commissioner Lair?
Aye.
President McCLAIN-HILL?
Aye.
Commissioner Neiman Brady?
Aye.
Vice President Ruiz?
Aye.
5 ayes, motion adopted.
Terrific. And is there a motion to adopt this item as amended?
So moved.
Second?
Commissioner KATZ? Aye. Commissioner Lair?
Aye.
President McCLAIN-HILL?
Aye.
Commissioner Neiman Brady?
Aye.
Vice President Ruiz?
Aye.
5 ayes, motion adopted.
Okay, terrific. So we're now on L6. L6 is my motion. I apologize for it getting out to folks so late. It is relatively simple, although long, and seeks to establish just a threshold of reporting to this board on our compliance with General Orders 95 and General Order 165, which are the items that fell through the cracks as it relates to the priority 1 and 2 backlog repairs. In addition to setting up a regular process of quarterly reports, and let me just back up. The sort of foundation of this motion was prepared by the city attorney's office in response to my direction that they review the practices, the reporting requirements, et cetera, disclosures that would otherwise be required if DWP were being regulated in a manner consistent with the way in which IOUs are regulated by the PUC. One of the anomalies of being a municipal utility district is that not all of our compliance practices are overseen in the same way that the compliance practices for investor-owned utilities are overseen. As the Board of Commissioners, we have sort of that front line, both responsibility, I think, and obligation to ensure that there is a sufficient level of oversight and transparency for these kinds of items, irrespective of the department deciding they want to do it. As we discussed earlier, when it comes to policy, there are certain policies that seem to be appropriate at the department level. There are other policies that are really appropriate at the board level. And I think that our recent experience has demonstrated that these are policies, that this is a policy that is appropriate to be adopted at the board level. It also, the motion also calls for the department to provide a copy of the annual inspection and maintenance operation procedure manual updates, and has, as I understand it, such a manual would clearly lay out the criteria that is being used and the other relevant information with respect to these programs. So that's what the motion intends to capture. The department has also indicated in previous presentations to this board that they would provide us with copies of PUC audit reports. This motion, again, requires that they do so and do so within 30 days of receipt. So it is simply belts and suspenders as it relates to transparency. And frankly, is the first in what I expect will be a number of items that we review as we continue to look at places where regular compliance, tracking, and transparency or reporting may fall through the cracks because there is no outside entity that is overseeing the department in these areas.
Well, I think it's a good combination of the quarterly reporting and then the annual reports. So with that, I'd like to move approval and thank our board president for her leadership in this motion.
Second. Would you take the roll?
Commissioner KATZ?
Aye.
Commissioner Lehr?
Aye.
President McCLAIN-HILL?
Aye.
Commissioner Neiman-Brady?
Aye.
Vice President RUIZ?
Aye.
5 ayes, motion adopted.
So I think that brings us to the end of our open session agenda. And Ben, first, welcome to the table.
Thank you.
And second, it is you who has the magic words to deliver as we move into closed session. It is 12:20. We'll take a 20-minute break before moving into closed session, which we will do in this room. So we will, Ben, let you move us.
I got through my first amended motion there. I almost small heart attack, but I'm okay, everyone. All right. The board is commencing closed session. After the closed session, the board will publicly report any action taken in closed session and the vote or abstention thereon of every member present in accordance with California Government Code Section 54957.1.
Thank you, sir. We are recessed and we'll convene in closed session in 20 minutes.
Here or in
Here.
Okay.